There is something almost imperceptible yet undeniable that you carry with you, an essence that others can sense the very moment you cross a threshold. It is not simply presence, but a rare aura, the kind only true empaths possess. What makes it so intriguing is that Carl Jung's hidden research sheds light on why this invisible energy renders you magnetic, while, at the same time, leaving you deeply vulnerable. Could it be that what people feel around you is more than emotion? It is something far more profound. Jung uncovered that true empaths don't merely absorb or reflect the emotions of others. They radiate what he called the wounded healer frequency, an energetic signature forged in the crucible of pain, yet transformed into a force of uncommon power. This aura, contrary to popular belief, does not arise from natural innocence or innate goodness. Instead, it emerges through a kind of psychological alchemy that very few ever reach in their lifetimes. In his private notes, Jung meticulously documented how this rare empathic field operates across multiple dimensions at once. It has the ability to heal others simply by existing in their presence. But such a gift is not without risk. This same energy irresistibly draws both light and shadow, allies and predators, in ways that can elevate the empath to extraordinary heights, or break them down entirely. The most unsettling revelation? Jung realized that this aura becomes perilous when the empath remains unaware of its true nature. Without conscious understanding, it acts as a beacon for energy vampires, steadily draining the empath from within, even as they continue to shine outward. So the question arises, what does it mean to truly harness this gift? Join me as we descend deeper into Jung's most profound insights about the invisible energy that surrounds true empaths. He believed that comprehending this rare aura marks the boundary between living as a wounded healer and stepping into the role of a sovereign one. And here lies the striking truth that modern psychology still hesitates to embrace. Your empathic aura is not a gift handed down at birth. It is, in fact, a survival mechanism, one born from psychological necessity, transmuted over time into something sacred through what I call traumatic alchemy. Jung himself wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." Yet for empaths, that journey of becoming requires a deep reckoning with the roots of their extraordinary sensitivity. Your nervous system did not stumble into this state by chance. It was adaptive, forged with purpose. Think about it from Jung's perspective on human psychological development. He observed that empaths frequently emerge from childhood environments where survival depended on constant emotional vigilance. You learn to decipher micro-expressions before you could even form words. You developed radar for subtle shifts in emotional climate because your safety was tied to anticipating the emotional weather around you. But here's what Jung realized that most therapists miss. This survival mechanism did not simply help you navigate childhood trauma. It literally rewired your brain to function at frequencies far beyond ordinary perception. Your mirror neurons became hyperactive, responding with extraordinary sensitivity. Your limbic system grew unusually responsive, amplifying every signal of emotion around you. Gradually, your entire nervous system evolved into what can only be described as an emotional antenna, finely tuned to vibrations that most people will never notice. Can you see how profound this adaptation truly is? Modern neuroscience now confirms what Jung had intuited decades earlier. Dr. Elaine Aron's groundbreaking research on highly sensitive persons demonstrates that empaths process sensory input more deeply in the regions of the brain connected to awareness, empathy, and emotional resonance. Yet Jung's insight stretched even further. He perceived that this neurological difference doesn't just change how you process information inside your mind, it actually generates an energetic field, something that radiates outward, something others can feel before a word is spoken. But the most extraordinary part is not merely its existence. What astonished Jung was the way this empathic aura functions like a kind of psychological radar. It doesn't passively receive the energy of others, it actively transmutes it through unconscious alchemical processes that few ever recognize. Imagine stepping into a room. Before any conversation begins, your energy is already at work. Jung observed that empaths, often without realizing it, engage in what could be called energetic archaeology. They instinctively dig beneath the polished masks, beneath the surface gestures, to uncover the raw emotional truth hidden in others, even truths people conceal from themselves. Your aura, he noted, reads not just behavior, but the very shadow projections individuals carry, those unseen fragments buried in the collective unconscious. Here's how it unfolds in stages. Stage 1, the energetic scan. Your empathic aura instinctively attunes to what Jung described as feeling-toned complexes, the deep, unconscious emotional patterns that silently govern human behavior. You can sense the weight of unprocessed grief, the pulse of hidden rage, the quiet trembling of suppressed fear, long before these emotions reach conscious awareness in the person themselves. Stage 2, the unconscious absorption. Because your psyche was shaped to be permeable as a survival strategy, you begin to absorb these energies without deliberate choice. Jung referred to this phenomenon as participation mystique, the unconscious identification with the inner states of others. You do not just witness their emotions, you carry them almost as if they were your own. Stage 3, the alchemical process. Here lies the revolutionary brilliance of Jung's vision. Your empathic nervous system doesn't stop at absorbing emotional energy. It processes it through what he called the transcendent function. In this mysterious, unconscious transformation, raw and chaotic emotional material is refined into wisdom, insight, and even healing potential. Is this why people feel lighter after being in your presence, even when you've spoken no words, offered no advice, and made no obvious effort? Your aura has, in effect, processed their shadow material and reflected back to them a more integrated, coherent version of their emotional truth. This is why they walk away changed without ever knowing why. But Jung warned about something crucial. This process only works consciously. When empaths remain unaware of their own alchemical nature, they stop being psychological alchemists and instead become what I call emotional sponges, absorbing endlessly, yet never truly transforming. The difference may seem subtle, but it is the very boundary between empowerment and depletion. But here's where Jung's research becomes truly alarming. Your rare empathic aura generates what he described as archetypal attraction patterns, a kind of invisible magnetism that pulls both healers and predators into your orbit. Jung identified distinct archetypes that are unconsciously drawn to empathic fields, each carrying their own hidden intentions. The first is the wounded child archetype. People carrying unhealed childhood trauma are instinctively drawn to your presence. Why? because your aura radiates the promise of unconditional acceptance, the kind of nurturing and recognition they never received in their early years. To them, you embody a sanctuary for their unspoken pain. Then comes the shadow projector. These are individuals who have disowned or buried parts of themselves, refusing to face what they most fear. Instead, they unconsciously seek empaths like you to carry and process their rejected emotions. Your aura in this dynamic becomes a silent container for the weight they cannot bear to acknowledge. And the most draining archetype Jung described is the energy vampire. He saw these figures as psychological parasites, people whose own empathic development was arrested or never nurtured. Unable to generate or process energy themselves, they learn to survive by siphoning from others, feeding off the emotional radiance you naturally emit. Yet Jung also emphasized that not all archetypes drawn to empathic auras are destructive. There are profoundly positive ones as well. The conscious seeker, for example, is an individual committed to their own inner growth. They recognize your aura as a mirror that reflects their higher potential. And they do not come to consume, but to resonate, to exchange, to co-evolve. Another is the authentic self. These are people ready to embrace the fullness of their humanity, drawn to you because your presence gives silent permission to feel deeply without fear or shame. Your aura models radical acceptance and in turn frees them to meet themselves honestly. The danger arises in what I call archetypal confusion, when empaths cannot discern who arrives to heal and who arrives to feed. And here lies the paradox. Your aura attracts both. Without conscious awareness and careful discernment, you may find yourself pouring endless energy into those who are not yet ready, draining your reserves in the futile hope of transforming what refuses to change. If you've noticed that your life draws both deeply spiritual individuals and profoundly troubled ones, pause and reflect. This is no accident. You are living within what Jung called the wounded healer constellation, an energetic pattern where your empathic aura carries both the potential for extraordinary healing and the vulnerability to being consumed. Jung understood that the wounded healer archetype does not heal by transferring energy from self to other. Instead, it operates through what I call resonant frequency healing. Your aura, finely tuned, radiates at frequencies that awaken dormant healing capacities in those around you. You don't heal them by giving something away. You heal by catalyzing their own inner restoration. Think of how this unfolds. When someone burdened with unprocessed trauma encounters your empathic field, they undergo what Jung described as constellation activation. Simply through your presence, the healer archetype within them begins to stir, awakened by the living proof that wounds can indeed be transformed into wisdom. But Jung discovered something profound about this process. The wounded healer can only activate authentic healing in others to the degree that they themselves have engaged in shadow work. Your own willingness to face, integrate, and transmute your inner darkness defines how powerfully you can illuminate that path for others. This process only works consciously. When empaths remain unaware of their own alchemical nature, they stop being psychological alchemists and instead become what I call emotional sponges, absorbing endlessly yet never truly transforming. The difference may seem subtle, but it is the very boundary between empowerment and depletion. But here's where Jung's research becomes truly alarming. Your rare empathic aura generates what he described as archetypal attraction patterns, a kind of invisible magnetism that pulls both healers and predators into your orbit. Jung identified distinct archetypes that are unconsciously drawn to empathic fields, each carrying their own hidden intentions. The first is the wounded child archetype. People carrying unhealed childhood trauma are instinctively drawn to your presence. Why? Because your aura radiates the promise of unconditional acceptance, the kind of nurturing and recognition they never received in their early years. To them, you embody a sanctuary for their unspoken pain. Then comes the shadow projector. These are individuals who have disowned or buried parts of themselves, refusing to face what they most fear. Instead, they unconsciously seek empaths like you to carry and process their rejected emotions. Your aura in this dynamic becomes a silent container for the weight they cannot bear to acknowledge. The most draining archetype Jung described is the energy vampire. He saw these figures as psychological parasites, people whose own empathic development was arrested or never nurtured. Unable to generate or process energy themselves, they learn to survive by siphoning from others, feeding off the emotional radiance you naturally emit. Yet Jung also emphasized that not all archetypes drawn to empathic auras are destructive. There are profoundly positive ones as well. The conscious seeker, for example, is an individual committed to their own inner growth. They recognize your aura as a mirror that reflects their higher potential. They do not come to consume, but to resonate, to exchange, to co-evolve. Another is the authentic self. These are people ready to embrace the fullness of their humanity, drawn to you because your presence gives silent permission to feel deeply without fear or shame. Your aura models radical acceptance and, in turn, frees them to meet themselves honestly. The danger arises in what I call archetypal confusion, when empaths cannot discern who arrives to heal and who arrives to feed. And here lies the paradox: your aura attracts both. Without conscious awareness and careful discernment, you may find yourself pouring endless energy into those who are not yet ready, draining your reserves in the futile hope of transforming what refuses to change. If you've noticed that your life draws both deeply spiritual individuals and profoundly troubled ones, pause and reflect. This is no accident. You are living within what Jung called the wounded healer constellation, an energetic pattern where your empathic aura carries both the potential for extraordinary healing and the vulnerability to being consumed. Jung understood that the wounded healer archetype does not heal by transferring energy from self to other. Instead, it operates through what I call resonant frequency healing. Your aura, finely tuned, radiates at frequencies that awaken dormant healing capacities in those around you. You don't heal them by giving something away. You heal by catalyzing their own inner restoration. Think of how this unfolds. When someone burdened with unprocessed trauma encounters your empathic field, they undergo what Jung described as constellation activation. Simply through your presence, the healer archetype within them begins to stir, awakened by the living proof that wounds can indeed be transformed into wisdom. But Jung discovered something profound about this process. The wounded healer can only activate authentic healing in others to the degree that they themselves have engaged in shadow work. Your own willingness to face, integrate and transmute your inner darkness defines how powerfully you can illuminate that path for others. If you're carrying unintegrated trauma, your aura becomes contaminated with what I call bleeding energy. Instead of serving as an inspiration for healing, it unconsciously signals others to wound you in the very same patterns you have yet to resolve. This is why empaths so often find themselves surrounded by narcissists, emotional vampires, and people who seem endlessly in need of rescuing. Your unhealed wounds emit an electromagnetic signature, a kind of invisible broadcast that irresistibly draws in those who will continue to reenact your original trauma until you fully integrate and transform those experiences. Jung once wrote, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." For empaths, this truth carries profound weight. Every person you attract, whether nurturing or draining, is reflecting something back about your own unconscious patterns. The people who seem to drain you endlessly are in fact mirroring the subtle ways you deplete yourself. As the ones who cannot receive your love without resistance are reflecting the inner struggles you still hold around self-love and self-acceptance. Could it be that the outer world is always whispering clues about the wounds within? The alchemical solution, according to Jung, was what he called conscious suffering, the radical willingness to feel your own wounds fully and deeply so that they no longer fester as raw, open vulnerabilities, but instead transmute into wisdom. When you choose this path of inner work, your aura undergoes a dramatic shift. It rises from what I call the wounded healer frequency into the sovereign healer frequency. At this stage, you still carry profound empathy, but now it is rooted in wholeness rather than woundedness. And here is where Jung's understanding becomes nothing short of revolutionary. He observed that your empathic aura begins to function as what he termed the psychological mirror. This mirror does not simply reflect back-surface emotions, it reflects the very state of consciousness or unconsciousness within others. Conscious individuals feel an immediate sense of calm in your presence, as if your aura were reflecting their own inner light back to them. This is what I call recognition resonance, the quiet joy of being seen, accepted, and honored exactly as one is. To such people, your presence becomes a reminder of their truest self, and they leave you feeling lighter, clearer, and more whole. But unconscious individuals often experience the opposite. They feel unsettled, disturbed, even threatened around awakened empaths because your aura reflects back to them the shadow material they are trying desperately to avoid. Jung described this uncomfortable reaction as shadow projection anxiety. When this occurs, these individuals may lash out. They may attempt to attack you verbally, diminish your light, or make you responsible for their own discomfort. This explains why empaths often evoke such extreme responses in others. To some you are magnetic, drawing them like moths to flame. To others, your very presence feels intolerable, igniting hostility they cannot explain. And yet there is also the conscious mirror response. When someone who is genuinely committed to their own inner work encounters your empathic aura, the effect is strikingly different. They feel uplifted, inspired, and expanded simply by being near you. They may say things like, "I feel so peaceful around you," or "You help me remember who I really am." These are the people who energize you rather than deplete you, because with them, the exchange of energy is mutual, balanced, and nourishing. They're also reflecting your light back to you. The unconscious mirror response is what occurs when someone who is avoiding their own shadow encounters your empathic aura. Instead of feeling peace, they feel triggered and defensive, as if a mirror has been placed in front of them that they cannot bear to look into. They might criticize your sensitivity, mock your depth of feeling, or accuse you of being too much. Sometimes they attempt to provoke you into emotional outbursts, hoping to lower your frequency so that it matches theirs. These encounters are draining because, at their core, such individuals are trying to pull you down into unconsciousness, anything to avoid facing what your very presence is revealing to them. Then comes the predatory mirror response. When energy vampires step into the field of your empathic aura, they sense an opportunity almost instantly. They intuitively recognize your rare capacity for emotional processing and begin, often without realizing it, to strategize ways of making you their personal emotional regulator. This is why some people trauma dump onto you without end, why others seem to create constant crises, or why they position themselves as helpless victims who need perpetual rescuing. Understanding this mirror effect is absolutely crucial, because it illuminates why boundary setting feels so uniquely difficult for empaths. When you establish boundaries with unconscious people, you are not merely protecting your own energy, you are refusing to enable their avoidance of their own shadow work. And this, more often than not, provokes resistance. But here lies Jung's most profound insight about empathic auras. You are not only processing the emotional residue of individuals, you are connected to something far larger, what he called the collective unconscious, that vast psychic reservoir containing the memories, fears, and aspirations of all humanity. Jung discovered that empaths function as what I call collective antenna. Without effort, you are constantly tuning into the emotional frequencies of not just individuals, but entire groups, communities, even the broader field of global consciousness. This explains why you might suddenly feel sorrow during world tragedies you have no personal connection to, anxiety during times of collective upheaval, or complete exhaustion after spending time in crowded places filled with people carrying unprocessed emotions. Your empathic aura is literally registering archetypal energies, forces that go beyond personal psychology and reach into the mythic and symbolic realms of humanity's shared shadow. In those moments, you are sensing humanity's unhealed traumas, its suppressed emotions, and the disowned aspects of its collective consciousness. This connection to the collective unconscious is paradoxically both your greatest gift and your greatest challenge. On one hand, it grants you access to universal wisdom, archetypal guidance, and even the potential to participate in healing wounds that belong not just to you, but to entire cultures or generations. On the other hand, it exposes you to overwhelming emotional content, energies that are not personally yours, yet feel uncannily real, as if you were carrying them yourself. Jung believed that empaths hold a critical role in the unfolding story of humanity. Because you can feel what others have numbed themselves to, you act as a living reminder of what has been forgotten, denied, or repressed. In this way, you become an early warning system for collective shadow eruptions. Wars, social upheavals, environmental crises, all of these disturbances often register within your field before they fully manifest in the physical world. But Jung also warned that empaths must learn to distinguish carefully between personal material and collective material, or else they risk what he called psychic inflation, the dangerous tendency to assume responsibility for healing wounds that in truth belong to all of humanity. To blur this line is to carry the weight of the world on your nervous system, often without realizing that it was never yours to carry in the first place. If you've ever felt overwhelmed by world events, or found yourself suddenly overcome by emotions that had no connection to your personal life, then you've already experienced this phenomenon. You've felt what I call collective bleed-through, the sense that you are absorbing pain that doesn't originate from your own story. In such moments, you may even whisper to yourself, "I feel the world's pain." This is why Jung developed a framework for transforming empathic vulnerability into sovereignty, a way of turning your aura from a sponge into a conscious instrument of strength. I call it the aura method, inspired by his principles of individuation. It unfolds in 4 steps. A. Acknowledge your energetic nature. Jung emphasized that nothing can be integrated until it is first recognized. Most empaths live unconsciously, unaware that they are operating with different neurological wiring and heightened energetic sensitivity. A crucial starting point is acknowledging that your empathy is not merely emotional, it is energetic. You quite literally absorb and process information through channels that others cannot access. This is not weakness, though it often feels like a burden. Rather, it is a sophisticated form of consciousness that Jung referred to as differentiated perception. Begin with awareness. Track your energy levels throughout the day. Observe which people, places, and situations leave you feeling vibrant, and which ones drain you into exhaustion. Jung called this practice energy accounting, becoming conscious of how your empathic gifts are being engaged and whether they are being used or misused. You understand your archetypal patterns. Jung believed that every human being lives and acts through archetypal patterns, but empaths are especially susceptible to what I call caretaker complexes. These are unconscious beliefs that your value or worth depends on your ability to heal others. Identifying these patterns is essential. Ask yourself, do you feel guilty when you're not helping someone? Do you consistently attract people who need fixing? Do you find yourself carrying the emotions of others as if they were your own responsibility? These are signs that your gifts are being hijacked by unconscious complexes rather than guided by conscious choice. Jung's solution was a practice he called active imagination, entering into dialogue with these archetypal forces, tracing their origins and transforming the way they express themselves in your life. Reclaim your energetic boundaries. Jung understood that boundaries are not rigid walls designed to block the world out. Instead, he saw them as what I call conscious membranes, structures that allow love and genuine connection to flow in while filtering out manipulation, exploitation, or energetic intrusion. For empaths, boundary work must be practiced not only at the behavioral level, but at the energetic level. This means learning to recognize the subtle moment when your aura is being invaded, siphoned, or drained. It also means having reliable techniques to restore your energetic integrity quickly. Jung himself practiced what he described as psychological hygiene, regular rituals to cleanse absorbed energies and realign with one's authentic frequency. This could take many forms: meditation, immersion in nature, deep creative expression, or any practice that helps you return to the unshakable truth of who you are beneath all that you absorb. A. Activate Conscious empathy. Jung's ultimate goal was what he called conscious empathy, the rare ability to feel with others without losing yourself in them. Unlike empathy driven by unconscious wounds or compulsions, this is empathy that serves the higher purpose of awareness and growth. Conscious empathy means that you are able to choose when and how to engage your empathic gifts rather than being carried away by them. It is the strength to stand as a witness to suffering without becoming consumed by it, to offer a healing presence without depleting your own reserves of energy. Isn't this what so many empaths secretly long for, the freedom to care deeply without drowning in the pain of others? This level of empathic mastery requires what Jung described as the transcendent function, the capacity to hold opposites in your awareness simultaneously. You can be both compassionate and boundaried, both open and protected, both exquisitely sensitive and remarkably strong. To live within this paradox is not easy, yet when you integrate Jung's principles, something extraordinary begins to unfold. Your empathic aura transforms from what I call wounded healer frequency to sovereign healer frequency. Jung himself observed this dramatic shift in some of his most advanced patients, those who had done the deep inner work of integration. The sovereign empath retains all the sensitivity, intuitive perception, and subtle gifts of the wounded healer. But now these gifts are no longer driven by unconscious compulsion. They are directed by conscious choice, grounded in wisdom rather than reactivity. This leads to what I call the energetic shift. Your aura grows more radiant, yet at the same time it becomes contained and centered. No longer leaking energy indiscriminately into every interaction, you begin to radiate what Jung referred to as integrated wholeness, an unmistakable energetic signature that inspires others to take responsibility for their own growth rather than unconsciously leaning on you to process their pain. People still feel the depth of your empathic presence, but the quality changes. Now they experience what I call empowering resonance rather than enabling resonance. Your presence awakens in them their own latent capacity for healing. It no longer creates dependence on your emotional labor, but instead sparks self-activation. As a result, the entire attraction pattern in your life changes. Jung noted that sovereign empaths call in a completely different archetypal constellation. Those who once drained your light, emotional parasites, energy vampires, and chronic rescuers, fall away naturally because your aura no longer emits the available for draining frequency. In their place, you begin to attract what Jung called individuated souls, people who have already done their own shadow work and who can meet you at the same level of consciousness. These connections feel entirely different. They are mutually nourishing, balanced, and expansive because both people are contributing to the energetic exchange rather than one carrying the burden of giving while the other only receives. And then something even more remarkable emerges. The healing becomes effortless. Jung observed that sovereign empaths often heal others simply through presence, without the need for conscious effort or deliberate energy expenditure. Your integrated aura itself becomes what I call a healing field, a subtle atmosphere that naturally awakens growth in those around you. This happens because you are no longer trying to heal from a place of fracture or longing. Instead, you are healing from your wholeness. Your aura radiates the possibility of integration, a living example that shows others it is truly possible to transform pain into wisdom, sensitivity into strength, and wounds into gifts. Jung believed that empaths serve a crucial role in what he called the collective individuation process, the ongoing evolution of humanity toward greater consciousness and inner integration. And this means that your rare empathic aura is not merely a personal gift or a private sensitivity. It is, in fact, a collective necessity, a vital resource for humanity's progress. In a world where countless people have grown disconnected from their emotional truth, where numbness often replaces authentic feeling, empaths serve as what I call consciousness bridges. You help others remember their own capacity to feel deeply and to connect with what is real inside them. Yet Jung offered a profound caution here. He warned about the dangers of what he named the savior complex, the unconscious belief that you are responsible for healing everyone. This seductive pattern may feel noble, but it quietly undermines true healing because it fosters dependency rather than empowerment. The true collective healing mission of empaths is not to carry the pain of the world on their shoulders. Instead, it is to model what Jung described as conscious feeling, the capacity to embrace emotional depth while remaining grounded and centered in oneself. When others witness this embodied balance in your aura, they are reminded, almost as if by permission, that they too can enter their own emotional depths without becoming lost. This leads to what I call the ripple effect. Jung observed that when a single person in a family system, or even within a larger community, achieves this level of empathic sovereignty, it sets off waves of change, what might be described as consciousness ripples that reach everyone in the system. Your integrated aura acts as a silent invitation, encouraging others to stop numbing their emotions, to stop running from their shadows, and to begin processing them consciously. Can you imagine the quiet revolution this creates within a family, a group, or even a culture? This is how true collective healing takes place, not by one person attempting to carry everyone's suffering, but through conscious individuals modeling that it is indeed possible to feel everything and still remain whole. This is the evolutionary role Jung envisioned for empaths. He believed that empaths represent a significant developmental step in the unfolding of human consciousness itself. Your extraordinary ability to process emotions at such sophisticated and nuanced levels is preparing humanity for what Jung called the next stage of psychological development. As more empaths awaken to their gifts and learn to wield them consciously, society as a whole moves closer to what Jung described as the conscious collective, a humanity capable of feeling deeply, engaging shadow material with honesty, and integrating wholeness on a species-wide scale. But here lies Jung's ultimate insight about the rare empathic aura. It is not meant to be a heavy burden that weighs you down. It is meant to be a sacred gift that you consciously choose to share with discernment. As Jung himself wrote, your vision becomes clear when you look into your heart. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens. For empaths, this awakening comes in the recognition that your aura is not simply an echo of your wounds, but rather a luminous reflection of your inner wholeness. When you complete the long journey from wounded healer to sovereign healer, your empathic gifts finally take their true form. They become what Jung called a blessing rather than a curse. At this point, you can feel deeply without drowning in emotion. You can love fully without losing yourself in another. And you can heal others not by exhausting your own life force, but by radiating the integrated wholeness that naturally inspires transformation in those around you. This transformation requires what Jung considered the most courageous act possible, the willingness to be authentic in a world that so often punishes authenticity, sometimes harshly. To embody authenticity means daring to live in alignment with your truth, even when society pressures you to conform, to silence your sensitivity, or to hide the very gifts that make you who you are. Your rare aura shines brightest when you no longer shrink yourself to make others comfortable, but instead embody your gifts as living expressions of your inner truth. The sovereign empath does not tone down their sensitivity to fit in. Instead, they learn to radiate it consciously, with clarity and intention. They refuse to dim their light in order to blend with the shadows of those around them. Rather, they learn to shine it strategically, like a lantern in the dark, illuminating what others cannot see. And here lies a profound shift. Sovereign empaths do not apologize for their depth, for their capacity to feel so much more than most. Instead, they use that very depth to create more depth in the world, adding meaning where there was only surface, and connection where there was only emptiness. If you are ready to step into this transformation, turning empathic wounds into sovereign wisdom, declare it with intention. I choose conscious empathy. There is something you carry, something others sense instantly the moment you enter a room. It is not merely your presence, but an unmistakable resonance, a rare aura that only true empaths possess. Carl Jung's hidden research reveals why this invisible energy makes you both magnetic and vulnerable at the very same time. Jung discovered that true empaths don't merely feel emotions as most people do. They radiate what he called the wounded healer frequency, an energetic signature that is born from suffering, yet refined into a power so rare that few ever touch it. This aura is not the product of simple goodness or naive kindness. Rather, it is the result of deep psychological alchemy, forged in the crucible of pain and transformation. Few human beings ever achieved this level of inner refinement. In his private notes, Jung described how this empathic aura operates across multiple dimensions. It can heal through presence alone, offering relief and resonance without a word being spoken. Yet paradoxically, it also attracts both light and shadow in equal measure, drawing to the empath people and energies that can either elevate them into greater wholeness or devastate them if they remain unconscious of the process. And here is the shocking truth Jung uncovered. This aura becomes dangerous when empaths fail to recognize and understand its true nature. Without awareness, it turns into a beacon for energy vampires, drawing those who seek to drain rather than to heal. Worse still, it can begin consuming the empath from within, burning their reserves until they collapse under the very weight of their unacknowledged gift. This is why Jung insisted that empaths must learn to navigate the invisible field that surrounds them. Join me then as we descend into Jung's most profound insights about this empathic aura and discover why understanding it marks the difference between living perpetually as a wounded healer or rising into the freedom of a sovereign one. Here's what Jung revealed, insights modern psychology still hesitates to fully embrace. Your empathic aura was not a gift you were simply born with. It was not random. It is a survival mechanism, an adaptation created under immense pressure, transfigured through what I call traumatic alchemy into something sacred. Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But for empaths, this privilege carries an additional challenge. It requires first understanding why your nervous system developed such extraordinary sensitivity. This sensitivity wasn't chance. It was necessity. It was adaptation." From Jung's lens on psychological development, empaths often emerge from childhoods where emotional survival depended on constant hypervigilance, an antenna always scanning the environment, tuned into shifts in mood, tone, or energy. This was not weakness. It was the nervous system's brilliant way of ensuring survival, a mechanism that once integrated becomes the empath's rarest and most powerful gift. You learn to read micro-expressions long before you could even read words. Every flicker of an eyebrow, every shift in tone, every subtle pause became a signal. You developed a kind of radar for emotional storms because your safety, even your very survival, depended on predicting them before they struck. Can you see how extraordinary that adaptation truly is? But here's the insight most therapists miss. This mechanism did far more than simply help you survive trauma. It rewired your entire brain to function at frequencies most people can't even perceive. Your mirror neurons became hyperactive, lighting up as if tuned to invisible frequencies. Your limbic system became exquisitely responsive, detecting nuances in emotional energy like a finely crafted instrument. In truth, your entire nervous system evolved into what I call an emotional antenna, constantly transmitting, constantly receiving. Modern neuroscience now validates what Jung intuited decades ago. Research on highly sensitive persons demonstrates that empaths process sensory input more deeply in the very brain regions tied to empathy, awareness, and emotional resonance. But Jung went even further. He understood that this neurological difference does more than alter perception. It generates an energetic field that others can feel the moment you step into a space. Yet the most extraordinary discovery was this: your aura functions as psychological radar. It doesn't merely absorb energy, it transmutes it. Imagine stepping into a room and without any conscious decision, beginning what I call energetic archaeology. You dig beneath surface appearances to uncover emotional truths that others are hiding, even from themselves. Your aura reads the shadow projections people carry, the hidden stories etched into their emotional frequency. Here's how this mysterious process unfolds. Stage 1. The energetic scan. Your aura automatically attunes to what Jung named feeling-toned complexes, the unconscious emotional patterns that quietly drive human behavior. You sense grief, rage, and fear long before others even dare to acknowledge their existence. Stage 2. Unconscious absorption. Because your psyche developed to be permeable as a survival strategy, you begin absorbing these energies without conscious choice. Jung called this participation mystique, the unconscious merging with another's inner state. Stage 3. The alchemical process. Here lies Jung's most revolutionary insight. Your empathic nervous system doesn't just absorb emotional material, it transforms it. Through the transcendent function, you alchemize raw emotional energy into wisdom, insight, and healing potential. This is why people often leave your presence feeling lighter, calmer, more whole, even when you haven't said a single word. Your aura processes their shadow material and reflects back something more integrated, a more authentic version of themselves. But Jung issued a warning that should not be overlooked. or this entire process only works when you are conscious of it. Without awareness, empaths stop being alchemists and collapse into emotional sponges, drained by what they carry rather than transformed by it. And there is another layer. Your rare empathic aura also creates what Jung called archetypal attraction patterns, magnetic pulls that draw certain people to you, for better or worse. Some are healers, seekers, and those longing for authenticity. Others are predators, shadow projectors, and energy vampires. Jung identified these archetypes with great precision: the wounded child, the shadow projector, and the energy vampire, but also the conscious seeker and the authentic self. The danger is what I call archetypal confusion. Without discernment, empaths cannot tell who comes to heal and who comes merely to feed. It is a subtle but critical distinction, one that can determine whether your path feels empowering or draining. Your aura was forged in the fire of survival, tempered and refined through every act of healing you've offered others. Yet, it reaches its truest radiance only when you turn inward, when you choose to heal yourself first. Jung understood this deeply. The wounded healer archetype is not the end of the empath's journey, it is only the beginning. The real completion is found in what Jung described as the sovereign healer, an empath who can hold the full spectrum of human emotion while remaining centered, grounded, and aligned with truth. Your aura is rare, not because you are broken, but because you have transformed brokenness into beauty, reshaping scars into strength, not because you are weak, but because you've cultivated the resilience to carry the full intensity of human experience. And not because you are destined to shoulder everyone else's pain, but because you have learned to alchemize it into wisdom. The world is in desperate need of empaths who recognize their gifts in the way Jung did, not as burdens to endure endlessly, but as sacred powers to be consciously directed. Imagine the shift in collective healing if more empaths saw themselves not as victims of their sensitivity, but as stewards of it. When you embody your empathic nature with awareness, you become what Jung so powerfully described as a living bridge between the conscious and the unconscious. You help others access their own capacity for authentic feeling without compromising your integrity, without dimming your own light. If you are ready to embrace your empathic aura as the true gift it is, then speak it into being. My sensitivity is my superpower. This declaration is not just about personal healing. It marks your journey from wounded healer to sovereign healer, a path that inevitably contributes to the collective. Each empath who integrates their gift clears the way for countless others to do the same. In that sense, your healing is never yours alone, it ripples outward. So share this with someone who needs to know without question that their empathy is a gift, not a curse. And if you are ready to go even deeper, watch my video, Why a Fed-Up Empath is More Dangerous Than the Narcissist Ever Imagined, where I reveal what unfolds when empaths reclaim their power, no longer drained by others, but radiating strength. This, however, is only the beginning of the path toward empathic mastery. Remember always, your sensitivity isn't too much. Your empathy isn't weakness. And your aura is not a burden. It is, and always has been, a bridge to higher consciousness. Thank you for being here, for watching, and for walking this path. And don't forget, like, share, and subscribe to Psyche's Labyrinth, because the world urgently needs the wisdom you carry.